Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, January 10th, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Sheryll Cashin, professor of the Georgetown University Law Center, author of White Space, Black Hood, Opportunity, Hoarding, and the Segregation in the Age of Inequality. Also on the program today, Manchin pulls his own economic package, supposedly ends all talks about passing legislation to help Americans. It's nice. Supreme Court expected to quash Biden's employer COVID test mandate soon because, you know, it's just a pandemic. 19 people die in New York's worst residential fire in decades. Chicago cancels school again and refused to work with teachers on a remote option. The three killers of Ahmaud Arbery sentenced to life in prison, only one eligible for parole. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin breaks his pledge and decides he will actually run for a third Senate term. Omicron creating worker shortages and pushing hospitals to the brink as deaths and hospitalizations creep up, or I should say shoot up, now that we're 21 days out from the first Omicron surge. Wrestling coach and Congressman Jim Jordan won't cooperate with the January 6th commission. He also, I guess, wouldn't cooperate with his former wrestlers in trying to stop a predator from molesting them. Yeah, but that's the side. Yeah. Afghanis faced a food and housing crisis in the wake of U.S. blocking aid and freezing assets. And Iowa Republicans ban journalists from the state Senate chambers. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, and making her triumphant return to the show to have an opportunity to comment on my beard in person.
Oh, right.
Emma Vigeland is here today.
I am back.
She is back.
I am back. I mean, what is there to say about the beard?
Right.
I mean, it's not just the beard. You also have gone with the clear lenses. Clear lenses, clear frames.
I get a different pair of frames.
Right.
Today, I can't see. I don't know what's going on. I think I'm tired or what, but I can't see anything.
Well, maybe they're too clear.
Yeah.
I don't know. You previously tried those on and you were like, I don't know if I should wear these on the show. And yet, without my influence, when I'm away from the show, you revert to,
I didn't revert. I would say I reverted. I just, I got in the habit of wearing these over vacation just because I couldn't find the other glasses one day. And so I put these on, and then you forget, then you get used to it. And then Saul challenged me to not shave my beard last week, and so to do the show, and so I did it.
Can't back away from a challenge.
No, and now I'm starting to think like maybe I'll just keep the beard until this Omicron thing passes. Maybe like until like the end of January or February, or whatever. Maybe until 2032 when this whole thing passes.
Or until you get a roll in and just like that.
What's that?
Until you get a roll in and just like that.
And just like that.
That's the Sex and the City, new Sex and the City show.
I mean, we'll see. I will be honest with people. I have not gotten a call.
Yeah.
I no longer have an agent who sends me out to audition.
Big's out of the picture.
Huh?
Mr. Big's out of the picture.
He is.
Mr. Big is out of the
I don't know if
picture.
you've heard this. I mean, you could make a triumphant return, and it is now about being old. That's what the whole show is, right? Carrie broke her hip. She had to pee in a bottle.
You know what? I was talking to a friend of mine the other night, and he was telling me that like they have hearing aids, and we're like, wait, how old are they supposed to be?
Oh yes,
and
Steve,
our age.
Steve has hearing aids. Yeah, it's a little. It really. They're fifth. They're
What's that?
They're in their mid-50s.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, they're in their mid-50s.
Thank you.
Who else is?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, maybe in the fun half, I'll tell my Chris Noth story. I don't know if I've told that story.
You told it to us off air.
All right, man, I'll tell that story. We've got plenty to get to today. Obviously, still ongoing, situation where it appears that the federal government and a lot of state and local governments have just decided we're just going to pretend that this thing is not happening, where we're getting over 1 million infections a day in this country, close to it, where we're starting to see hospitalizations. And
over 1 million, you said, or over 500,000?
I think at some days we're getting close to 1 million.
New York Times says averaging 500K cases
over 14 days.
Oh, wow.
I wonder where we're at. What was the most recent? I think we're up there.
Really?
And that's an average over 14 days.
Oof.
And we're watching a lot of places just sort of decide we're just going to ride it out. In New York City, the mayor just seems to be like, well, if you test kids coming in, you're going to find out that they're positive. It's that type of deal. And of course, now we're starting to see 21 days out, deaths rise, hospitalizations rise. We still don't know the implications of long COVID, specifically with Omicron, in any type of sort of meaningful way. So there's a lot of reason for concern. The hope is maybe this burns out quickly. That seems to be their plan. Let's just see if we can get through the next 3 weeks and everything will be fine. We'll see about that. But Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, has an interesting take on this. One has to wonder, why do you order about 1 million tests if you are the governor of Florida? And the reason is obvious: just to watch them expire and become bad. Why else would you pay for it? Here's Ron DeSantis.
Is it not like cheese?
Clip number 5.
Does it not get better as time goes on?
Now think about it. Before COVID, did anyone go out and seek testing to determine if they were sick? It's usually you feel like you're sick, and then you get tested to determine what you maybe have come down with. And so this is kind of a new thing where they've been saying just go out and test all the time. And again, you're free to do it, but I think what the DOH guidance from Florida is saying is that is unlikely to yield very much clinical value for you, and it also creates a lot of second-order follow-up problems. It's essentially a lockdown by stealth in the sense of if you test positive but you're not sick or have symptoms, you may have to isolate. They don't even know, the test can't tell you if you're even infectious or not. And these PCR tests, you can test positive for weeks after you've been infected, months even in some cases. And so what happens is blanket testing of healthy people, it leads to some kids being not in school. It leads to people not being able to go to work and doing some of these isolation, which may not even be justified. And so I think those guidelines are very sensible. And again, it's not saying people can do what they want to do, but I can tell you to just force healthy people like businesses to do that or whatever. We don't advise that at all. We think that's a mistake. We think people should live their lives. And then if they develop symptoms, you can obviously get a test. And if you're at risk and the treatment would really change the course for you, we obviously want to see that treatment done.
Emma made the point that it's a little ironic they're sitting there in front of a hurricane preparedness thing. Let's just talk about hurricanes. Like, you could prepare for a hurricane, but what if it doesn't come?
Yeah.
What if you board up your windows and the hurricane doesn't come? Then you gotta take the boards down, and then what if you while you're hammering the nails into the board that you put in, and you smash your thumb? What are you going to do then? If you
it's a waste of time, and your thumb's a little sore.
We could have a lot of people around the state with broken hands, and then you're going to be looking at like what are going to happen? How many orthopedic doctors do we have? You know, I mean, like, you're going to a breakdown of our orthopedic doctor system with the hurricane preparedness. That's what we're here for, to tell you, don't prepare unless you start to see the hurricane, unless you start to feel the wind blow. And not until we get about 50 miles per hour. That's when you start to prepare for the hurricane.
Well, it's interesting to me, too, because he mentions for you. You hear that, right? There's little clinical value for you, because the Republicans constantly want to make this an individual health issue as opposed to one that is a collective effort. That is what they've been trying to do. And by the way, the Biden administration doesn't seem to have that much of a response here, where it's just like, we're not going to shut down, we're not going to consider it, we're not going to have like a new approach, vaccinations, and then that's about it. And Democrats across the country are dealing with it the same way too, like here in New York as well. But this wasn't DeSantis. I think this was Rick Scott when he was governor. He wanted to, was this the case? He was trying to get a drug testing provision for welfare recipients. That is, you can do preventative testing in order to make sure that people who need money are not getting government benefits. No, that is a huge priority. But preventative testing in order to stop the spread of a deadly disease, that you can't do that. If you're asymptomatic, I mean, please only get tested if you are coughing up due to COVID.
It does sort of raise the question, why did you buy all those tests in Florida?
Yeah.
I mean, they're about to go bad. They're about to all expire. We got them just in case that we decided that we wanted to test, and we decided we didn't want to test.
Probably because somebody made a buck on it. But like the idea that there was blanket testing, like, what are you talking about? People were testing themselves if they felt sick or because they were traveling, right? Like, it wasn't like you're just going to get tested because you're having fun.
I mean, the bottom line is that you want to test to protect others. You want to test because maybe you think that you've been in some way exposed by others, or you're feeling bad. The idea that, yes, that people are going out and like, you know what, we could go to a movie, or we could just go to one of those mobile vans and get tested.
Oh, rage face
and just
there as
thing up our nose.
Toes
exactly
freeze off. Yeah, I mean, no preventative care, preventative health care, useless. Don't get mammograms, seriously.
Or STD tested. Just wait until something's wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want to kink shame, but there's a lot of people going around with those, going out on dates now and then doing the nostril thing, and that's, I mean, it's a waste of tests.
Don't knock it until you try it. Don't knock it until you try it.
It's a waste of tests. That's all I'm saying. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you get the free show, and you get the fun half, as well as supporting the free show and getting the fun half. And a reminder, the Big Lie show, no longer on the anniversary of January 16th. It will be May 15th, 2 p.m. in Boston at the Wilbur Theater. Tickets still available. Some people canceled. Also, Kowalski, we got to get Kowalski onto the Discord. Apparently, he's got some tickets. He won't be able to make it because it's planting season. He wants to donate them to some Boston nurses. So if you're around, there's another. That reminds me. There was a clip I was saving for your return because Patriots fan, Boston guy, heavy accent. We'll do that later.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
Talking about co-ops. It was pretty good. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, and you will get 10% off their great coffee from a free trade place. Want to welcome to the program Professor Sheryll Cashin. She's a professor at the Georgetown University Law Center, author of White Space, Black Hood, Opportunity Hoarding, and the Segregation in the Age of Inequality. Sheryll, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're here with Emma Vigeland.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with, essentially you argue in this book that we have a caste system that exists that is a sort of, I guess, a fusion of both a racial and economic disparity. And you start with Baltimore to illustrate this caste. Just give us a little bit of history about Baltimore. I didn't realize that well, I guess maybe this was Reconstruction, but post the Civil War, Baltimore was fairly segregated city in many respects, both geographically and across all sorts of lines. But take it from there in terms of Baltimore.
Well, the professor and me, can I just say, my argument is we have a system of residential caste that you can't understand economic and racial inequality in this country without understanding the role of geography. Where you live really defines your opportunities in life, and everybody of all colors in this country is trapped in residential caste. It happens to be that poor Black folks in high poverty neighborhoods, who I call descendants, are the worst off, but the minority of people who are in very affluent, hyper affluent white space are the best off. So just making that clear, I'm talking about residential caste. Baltimore is a classic example of this, right? In the 1890s, and Baltimore was the city that inspired my man, Frederick Douglass, he's right there, right? That's my man, right? To seek freedom. It had the highest number of free Black people in the city, even during the slave period, right? But in the 1890s, if you were Black in Baltimore, you could, if you could afford it, live where you wanted, go in the stores, try on the clothes, right? It's only in the 19 teens, and this happens everywhere, when Black people start fleeing in droves from the South to escape Jim Crow and landing further north and west, the dominant response to Black great migrants is to contain them in their own neighborhoods, hyper segregated neighborhoods, and then cut those neighborhoods off from the kind of resources, particularly federally backed mortgages, that are rained down on white neighborhoods, right? And you know, the same neighborhoods, and I take Baltimore through every period from, you know, the redlining of Black neighborhoods, HOLC, in the 30s, to urban renewal, the displacement of Black people who used to live in the most strategic areas near downtown, to highways. Any major city with a critical mass of Black people, look at where the highways were laid in the 50s. Typically, they mowed them through often very vital Black neighborhoods and called, you know, and then the construction of public housing. Black people who are displaced, they get put into, by HUD policies, intentionally segregated public housing, creating concentrated Black poverty where housing projects are. And, you know, you just keep going, right? In Baltimore, then I even with 6 or 7 or 8 Black mayors in a row, I say, you know, what's happened with Black neighbors in the history is we contain Black people, and then we disinvest in those neighborhoods, overinvest in white neighborhoods. And I show this pattern in Baltimore. There's a study that showed that even with Black leadership, Black representation, the mayors and the majority of Black people on the city council, they found to their horror when they looked at it, they were spending 4 times as much in white neighborhoods as Black neighborhoods. And then when you keep going to the 2000s, under the Hogan administration, yeah, what does Larry Hogan do? There's a light rail line called the Red Line. Right. ironically for historically redlined Black neighborhoods. But for the first time since it was planned in 1965, they were going to finally build this light rail line that was going to connect the poorest Black neighborhoods in East and West Baltimore to job centers downtowns and in the suburbs. Took 15 years to get this done. And as soon as Larry Hogan comes in, he rescinds it and reallocated all of the money, hundreds of millions of dollars, to outlying road projects in majority white areas, right? And this underscores what I'm talking about. We have, through public policy, intentionally constructed highly segregated neighborhoods of concentrated poverty and highly affluent neighborhoods. And we overinvest in majority white neighborhoods and disinvest and frankly prey on people in Black neighborhoods. And then we tell stories about the people in the hood to justify the way things are.
And we should say Hogan okayed the Purple Line, which is that light rail that actually connects wealthier neighborhoods.
In the wealthiest suburbs of Maryland surrounding Washington, D.C., suburbs that already have more than their fair share of transportation, like $1 billion in infrastructure investment in highways out there, right? Meanwhile, the carless poor folks who need a public transportation to get to a job, what does Hogan say? He said that would be a wasteful boondoggle.
All right. Well, I want to go through some of those three main processes in which the residential caste system is maintained. And you touched on these, but I want to go a little bit deeper into them. The first is the boundary maintenance, which there's been different mechanisms over the years that have done this, including, like you say, highway development and redlining. Let's just talk about the redlining, because I've read some revision of the revision as of late, which suggested that it wasn't necessarily exclusively racially based. But for the most part, there's at the very least a de facto racial element to this, right? I mean, in terms of where it ultimately lands. But just walk us through. I think we've talked about redlining as a process, but walk us through just sort of how that worked out. We can use Baltimore, but this story is fairly consistent in cities across the country.
Right. I'd encourage the folks who are watching or listening, where you live, if you just Google redlining and the name of your city, right? In the 30s, more than 200 American cities, the Homeowners Loan Corporation pays to have these maps generated where every single neighborhood is accorded a grade from A to D, right? Surprise, surprise, whatever the intentions in their head, majority Black neighborhoods, with extremely rare exception, even high middle-class Black neighborhoods, get the D rating, which is marked explicitly as hazardous. And a lot of these neighborhoods were actually quite vital, right? Harlem Park, and some of the neighborhoods oh God, I'm forgetting the name. It's a famous name of the neighborhood that Freddie Gray lived in. It'll come to me in a minute. But it was like the Harlem of Baltimore, very vital place, nightclubs, stores, everything, right? They get labeled hazardous. Immediately, it becomes difficult for people who live there to get mortgages, to keep up their home, to get investment, to invest in businesses or whatever. And there's a Fed study that says 8 decades later, they correlate the decision to mark neighborhoods with a D as hazardous with present decline and disinvestment and segregation, right? So the federal government, you can call it racial or whatever, de facto doesn't matter for the people who are living there, right? They devalued Blackness, right? And let me just say, the present manifestation of that policy decision, and by the way, Black neighborhoods are still redlined by banks and investors. We could talk about that in a minute. But the present manifestation of this policy is that Black people are cut out of the signature wealth building subsidies of the federal government. And today we have a wealth gap where for every dollar of wealth that whites on average have, Black people have 8 cents, right? And that is because of intentional public policies.
What were the factors? I mean, do we know what were the factors in making those assessments of the credit worthiness of a neighborhood? And do we have a sense of like what the equation was at that time?
Well, let me say this, Sam. I've read the history and the actual wording used by the underwriters about Black neighborhoods. And they would say things like that neighborhoods, even just mixed neighborhoods, but that they said that racial homogeneity was safe and mixing and undesirable populations was a risk. That's what they said explicitly.
So this wasn't, just to be clear, this wasn't like, well, the market capitalization of these homes divided by the infrastructure costs. No,
it was a perception that investing in Black neighborhoods was a risky, right? And again, a lot of these neighborhoods were quite vital, right? Businesses, entertainment corridors, middle class, in those days, all Black people had trouble getting housing somewhere else. So, high income Black people lived with poor people. They were economically mixed neighborhoods, right? So, I'll leave it to your viewers to decide whether it was consciously racist or de facto. But what happened as a result of that policy is that Black neighborhoods were redlining and it made it very difficult to get credit. And meanwhile, majority white neighborhoods, it became suddenly very easy to get a subsidized mortgage such that it was cheaper to go to the suburbs and buy a new home than to rent in the city, right? So through this signature policy and more that I talked about with Baltimore's history, what the government did was they shaped grandly residential patterns. And, like I say, Black people were not allowed to participate in the so-called suburban American dream, both because of redlining, but also because of straight up racism, right? Racially restrictive covenants, intentional exclusion of Black people and Jews, frankly, in a lot of these situations from participating in the neighborhoods that were most invested in over 8 decades.
And we should say, when we talk about wealth disparity in this country, the number one driver of intergenerational wealth is home ownership. And
right.
So if you can't get a loan for a certain neighborhood, the value of those houses are going to drop, right? Because, that's why we see house values rise as interest rates drop, because it becomes cheaper to own a more expensive home. And so over the years, through the generations, the value of these homes don't increase. And therefore, you have that loss of intergenerational wealth building.
Right. And, there's also something else that goes on beyond the redlining and making it difficult. And again, there's a recent study which went back and looked at a lot of the originally redlined cities, and they found, this is like in the 21st century, if you were Black or Latino, equally qualified with whites for mortgages, you still were apt to be discriminated against. And so we still get a lot of redlining, particularly in majority Black and majority Latino neighborhoods. So perceptions of Black and brown people in their neighborhoods got shaped, and that it actually also increased avoidance by white people from those neighborhoods. Why? Because if a neighborhood is chronically disinvested, it looks shabbier. People can't pay for their homes. And what happens is people begin to associate the conditions in those neighborhoods with the people who live there, right? And perceptions also, as you say, have everything to do with markets and the value of homes, right? A market reflects what people want, right?
And there's nothing I feel like more direct that the government could have done than the building of highways through certain neighborhoods, or the withholding of like transit services through to and building, you know, a subway line in one different area, which I know you write about a little bit. Like, that's a direct disinvestment in one area and investment in another, which creates, I mean, you can talk about like, oh, does the market decide this, and can people draw direct lines to this is a racist policy? But that is clear and obvious racist policy.
Right. When you prefer, I mean, I don't profess to know what's in Larry Hogan's heart, but it's at least it's clearly structurally racist for them to take, $750 million from the initially earmarked area that was going to get the construction started on the Red Line, and transfer it to majority white areas for roads there, and not even fill one pothole in the same Black neighborhoods with that money, right? You could call that looks racist to me, at least in terms of its impact, right? And civil rights claims were filed because of that, right? And good morning, Emma. I'm glad you're in the conversation.
No, yes, good morning to you.
Well, let's turn to the what you call opportunity hoarding and the dynamic of underinvestment in these neighborhoods, and then the overinvestment in these other neighborhoods. How does that work in practice? I mean, we have, we can see this. The most obvious thing, obviously, is schools, which again is self-perpetuating in terms of the property values in that area, because much of our schools are financed through a function of property taxes. Where else? I mean, how else do we see that? How does that disparity work in terms of investment? And presumably this is by the government too.
Right. So very important question, right? What happens when you construct neighborhoods that are extremely different by race and class, overwhelmingly affluent, poverty-free neighborhoods, and concentrated poverty neighborhoods, or just, struggling middle-class neighborhoods? And by the way, since the 2000s, these demarcations have become sharper, right? It's gotten harder for everybody to get into affluent neighborhoods, and it's also gotten harder to get out of struggling neighborhoods. But what does that do? It creates a direct horizontal competition for limited public and private investment between influential high opportunity areas and, frankly, everywhere else. And I've been writing about this for 2 decades, and what you find, if you actually look at the numbers in any given city, it's not surprising that affluent people tend to be able to bend public policies and private investment to their will, right? To get the kinds of luxury investment and subsidies to support that, and golden infrastructure. And by the way, to the listeners here, I want you to understand that something like only about a really small percentage of the population gets to live in the highest opportunity places, but everybody who's excluded from those areas is subsidizing them with their gas tax dollars, their sales taxes, their income taxes, right? So I have concrete numbers. In Chicago, a recent study found that white neighborhoods get 3 times as much public and private investment as Black ones. In Baltimore, again, even under a city that ostensibly has majority Black representation, they found that they were spending 4 times as much, right? And that kind of disparity is replicated all over the country. I cite this study for this book, and I can't remember the title, apologies to the author, but he looked at development patterns, since the 2000s, before the pandemic. There was a back to city movement, and a lot of cities were redeveloping, particularly their downtown areas. Some people would say gentrifying, becoming tech hubs or whatever. And what he found was a lot of spaces were whitening, and all the up and coming neighborhoods. At the same time that the cities were so-called revitalizing, a lot of majority Black and brown neighborhoods were becoming poorer, in part because they just weren't getting their fair share of the basic kind of investments that fuel community development. And this is kind of part of the reason I wrote this book, is these processes are largely invisible, except to people who pay very close attention to developers and what deals are being made.
To what extent? I mean, and I want to ultimately get to the stereotype-driven surveillance, but since we're here and we're talking about this sort of this I guess 21st century
residential cast.
no, the residential cast, but the return to the cities.
Right.
But to what extent does this residential caste phenomena exist outside of the cities? I mean, we have it in terms of obviously, like, some remnants of white flight to the suburbs and support for those suburban areas. But I'm curious as to where we find poverty in other areas. To what extent can you apply both ends of this equation in non-urban areas? I'm curious if that exists.
Right. So absolutely, race and class segregation exists in the suburbs. In fact, concentrated poverty is growing fastest in the suburbs, struggling suburbs, and a lot of formerly middle-class white people after the housing crisis experienced concentrated poverty for the first time. So I want to emphasize this. So residential caste was constructed beginning in the 30s out of fear of Blacks in large numbers, right? But the system, and it continues with these anti-Black processes of boundary maintenance and opportunity hoarding and surveillance, which we'll get to. But white people, struggling white people are harmed by it too, right? My whole point is this system of residential caste only works for the really small percentage of the population that can afford to buy their way into poverty-free havens, so.
Well, I'm curious as to that relationship, because I think we can see in the Jim Crow era, and when we see like that disenfranchisement following Reconstruction of Black voters, those former plantation owners and others who were interested in disenfranchising Black voters were also more than happy to disenfranchise poor white voters if that was the price that was involved in, okay, we're gonna cast a net, and some is gonna be tuna and there'll be some dolphins in there, and as long as we get that stuff out of there. How does, and on some level, it feels like this residential caste system functions in a similar fashion to that. What does it, how does it, are all three processes involved in that when we see it outside of urban centers? Or in areas where there's not as many Black people, or is it more focused on just the opportunity hoarding?
Okay, so for your listeners, I want to recap. So we have a system of residential caste. There are three anti-Black processes that undergird it, right? Boundaries, hoarding, and surveillance, right? When people of any color And I'd say in metropolitan areas, the one thing I'll say is I don't have enough data to tell you whether my theories about residential caste apply to rural, sparsely populated areas. I just don't have that data, and I won't make that claim. But I will make the claim in metropolitan areas, which includes suburbs, which the majority of people in this country live in a metropolitan area, that these systems continue. How does it affect white folks, right? Basically, anytime you enter the market trying to buy a home or rent an apartment, unless you are affluent, right? Unless you have money, right? Your choices are constrained because of this system, right? In many cities across this country, it is illegal to build anything other than a single family detached house on as much as 3/4 of the property, right? You have a lot of Gen Xers. I see it in my students coming out of law school laden with debt, right? Young people trying to get a piece of this American dream, right? And you have a residential system, but and one of the main ways we maintain boundaries today is through zoning. And so if you're in a city or metropolitan area where all the high opportunity places, the only way to get there is to be able to afford a single family detached home. And in my city, you're talking $1 million or more, right? In a lot of these places, you are locked out, right? So that's the point I'm making. Now, the title is provocative, and I'll be honest, right? I wrote this book out of anger about how difficult it is for my poor Black brothers and sisters to get out, to get to opportunity. That's what motivated the book. But I am very, very clear, particularly in the final chapter, that we need a multiracial coalition that wants something better than a society that's premised on separation and fear and locking others out. And that, so I hope that clarifies my point.
It does. And so let's touch on the stereotype driven surveillance. And then I do want to go into the examples of how we can fix this, at least in those policies. I mean, you touch on, some of the zoning stuff is one of the big issues on that. But let's first I want to just cover the last of the three processes that maintain this residential caste, and that being what you call stereotype-driven surveillance.
Right, and I think this one is the most familiar to, dare I say it, woke people, because of the videos, because of George Floyd's slow execution, Ahmaud Arbery, a tragic, senseless death. We just see these videos. So when you create very different neighborhoods, in Black neighborhoods, there's a very different type of policing that goes on in affluent white space, right? You have a sort of militarized policing. This is the one area that government overinvests in the Black neighborhoods: policing and incarceration. And police apply a lens, particularly to younger Black men, of presumed thug rather than presumed citizen. Everybody is a potential criminal, and they react to them as such, right? Stop and frisk everybody, right? Surprise, surprise, you stop and frisk everybody, you get more arrests, right. You get more people incarcerated. So there's that kind of policing, but then there's also private surveillance, and it's so heartbreaking, right? The Ahmaud Arbery video shows the worst of it, gun-toting vigilantism, right? But then, Chris Cooper, I start my book with him, a Harvard-educated bird watcher, gets the police called on him, right? So, and you've seen the videos about the Karens. There's a phenomenon of Black bodies, and it doesn't matter how respectable you look, being policed and surveilled by people who lack the cultural dexterity to see ordinary behavior as non-threatening, And I draw a distinction. Black people have more allies than they've ever had in this country. So this book is not anti-white. I'm not beating up on all white people. What I'm saying is that, I said, for people who don't do the work of looking at individual behavior as opposed to people's skin color to decide whether someone's a threat, we get policing, particularly in gentrifying areas. And I told it that the social tension can be very high in gentrifying areas that are transitioning from a neighborhood of color to whiter, right? And non-dexterous people who don't practice pluralism, who aren't particularly down with learning about different cultural norms, like Dominicans who like to play dominoes on the sidewalk, right? A 105-year-old Dominican man had the police called on him multiple times because someone just couldn't accept him and his buddies playing dominoes on the sidewalk. That's the surveillance I talk about. And boundaries animated, right? If you don't have, sorry to say this, but I guess I shouldn't be defensive about it, but the average white person in this country lives in a neighborhood that's 76% white. That's average. So if you live in a very white space, you don't get a lot of practice dealing with and knowing people who are not white, right? And so a lot of this surveillance is about policing territory and boundaries, right? That's part of residential caste. It's a big part of it.
And isn't a huge part of it too the fact that, like, I don't know when the last time the federal government actually invested in low-income housing was. I mean, pre-Reagan, that's just like out of the political conversation now, and especially in areas like the one that you're describing, it's not even imagined that could be a possibility in like the over the past 40 years.
Yeah, Emma, this is such a good question. Thank you for asking it. And you alluded to this, Sam, earlier. So why do we have all these policies, right? Part of it is we have I call it mythology, right? We have stories we tell ourselves about the people who live in the hood. And surprise, surprise, that shapes what policies are acceptable. So when we say public housing, what comes to mind to people if we're intellectually honest about it, right? Fear of I'm not going to repeat the stereotypes, right? I'm not going to participate in it, but so public housing, like welfare, right, is associated with the nastiest negative stereotypes of Black people, right? When in fact, and I try to debunk this with a chapter in which I feature, people who live in public housing want the same thing everybody else does. Everybody else wants quality schools, so I try to humanize these folks. But because of that pervasive stereotype, because of 5 decades of politicians, particularly presidential aspirants, stoking stereotypes, welfare queen, thug, super predator, looter, right? It becomes very difficult to get political support for public housing. And yet, we basically, yes, 40 years, the government just stopped building new units, right? Our competitors in Europe, public housing, they may call it government housing, they build units, surprise, surprise, for citizens to be able to get in stable housing at a decent price. But we just stopped doing that. We do have some, vouchers and stuff, but we largely exited the business of government building housing. We try to incentivize affordable housing through, tax incentives and things like that. But even with that program, it's about $10 billion a year, the low-income housing tax credit. We're basically what gets built is in already poor areas. So our biggest subsidy for affordable housing is actually investing in concentrating poverty.
Let's talk about the things that have been working about in terms of integrating and investing in neighborhoods. You mentioned Minneapolis as an example of investment and also the zoning as a potential fix. Walk us through that.
Right. And let me just emphasize, it's once you understand these processes, and it's maybe depressing to slog through, but I think it's a great read. The beauty is that the way forward is clear. All you have to do is reverse these policies, right? And I try in the final chapter, Abolition and Repair, to hold up positive, hopeful examples like Minneapolis of doing this. So to your question, right? After years of educating citizens there about how Minneapolis got so segregated, this history we marched through, they had a majority political consensus for adopting an inclusionary zoning ordinance that required that every neighborhood in Minneapolis has to have something, be open to other types of housing, not just single family housing, duplexes, quadplexes, apartment buildings. Every neighborhood has to be at least open to them or can't ban them, all right? That is really, really radical. And I applaud them for doing it. They also adopted, I don't know the specific details, but they have a policy of racial equity where they are looking at the dollars and budgets and paying attention to, where the dollars are going and trying to disrupt or at least channel resources into historically defunded neighborhoods, right? So that's an example of repair. And if you do that, you're not going to solve these problems overnight, right? But like California, so-called liberal California, they have a terrible housing crisis. They are 3 million housing units short of what is needed for the people who want it, right? And the legislature there, after years of fighting, finally got through a requirement that all neighborhoods have to be open to duplexes. That's a start, right? But what I see, the positive note is that I see in most cities a multiracial coalition that gets you to 51%, and it's a progressive coalition that's open to trying things, innovating. There are thousands of communities across this country that have inclusionary zoning ordinances. There are a number of communities that are adopting racial equity analysis. So it's not hopeless, right? There are things you can do on the ground that make things better. And I'll say, those communities that are less segregated, their economies tend to be better. They're, the indicia about social mobility for poor children, they're much higher. This is Raj Chetty worked from Harvard. So it's possible through public policy to make things better. And I believe more integrated cities are probably happier places to be, even for wealthy people, right? If there's less poverty and there's more inclusion, you're going to get less social dissension, less crime, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, the book is White Space, Black Hood, Opportunity, Hoarding, and Segregation in the Age of Inequality. Sheryll Cashin, professor at Georgetown University Law Center. Thank you so much for your time today. We'll put a link to that book at majority.fm.
It's been great being with you, Sam and Emma.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, folks. Just a word first from a sponsor. If you run a business, you can supercharge your success with Shopify. It's the all-in-one commerce platform. Start, run, and grow your business. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big businesses. So upstarts, startups, even podcasts selling merchandise, as well as established businesses alike, can sell everywhere, synchronize their online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Go to shopify.com/majority, all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/majority right now. All right, we're going to head into the fun half of the program. 646-257-3920 is the number. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
There is 2 hours plus of new literary hangover content for folks on the literary hangover feed. We talk about John Milton's Areopagitica, a famous free speech pamphlet written in 1644 after about 4 years of open sort of dialogue and free speech after during the Civil War between Parliament and the King. And he's writing that we should not end this and that free speech is good. We also talk about how Milton shouldn't be understood as mainly as a poet, but as a political writer. He was the Secretary of Foreign Tongues under Cromwell's revolutionary Republican government until that experiment broke, and then he wrote Paradise Lost. So we go into the politics of Milton, defender of regicide, first defender of regicide, according to Frederick Engels.
Secretary of Foreign Tongues?
Yeah, he all the diplomacy back then was like in Latin and French and stuff. So he was just a sort of genius with languages. So he would do all the translating and letter writing. And he also was a propagandist against the return of the king, which did happen. So he failed, but yeah.
Well, at least he tried.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind bringing that back, the Secretary of Foreign Tongues.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I just think that would be pretty cool.
I don't think like Pompeo could do that though.
No, somebody else would have to come in.
That was the role of what? Like Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings, right? Yeah.
Is that right?
I mean, not really, but he was basically manipulating the king and weakening him with his poison words.
Lord of the Rings. No, it's been a while for me. Folks! 646-257-3920 is the number. I'm up on my Harry Potter stuff, though.
Oh, you are, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, we did spoil that one for you. That one thing.
Don't remind me what it was.
Okay, we won't.
We're going to head into the fun half. You can IM the show at majorityapp.com. What?
It just came up on my computer. Dave Gettleman's out as the general manager
I don't know
of
what
the
that
Giants. It's like I feel like I just took drugs or something. It's like there's a huge weight off me.
I don't even know
this is gonna be a fun half.
Watch out, folks! You want to join us
Black Monday.
Things are gonna get crazy because Emma got good news about her Giants.
Oh man!
All right, see you in the fun half. You okay? Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library
What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back and Sam is gone. He's gone. I guess I should open IMs here. Yeah, I don't know. We figured since it went so well in our final week with me and myself and Matt and Bradley as well, that we should just keep it up.
Me and Bradley.
Right.
4 of us.
Yeah, but I count for 2.
Exactly.
That we were just gonna run it back. No, just kidding. Sam's just taking a quick break. We are gonna, I guess, play. What's that clip that he was referencing that you guys saved for me? I'm excited for this because I feel it makes me feel.
It's a very Massachusetts clip, but I guess it's football related too. I don't know. I'm actually haven't seen this clip.
It makes me feel special that there's special clips that are saved for me when in my absence. Sam's back.
oh yeah, that's the the Patriots guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
All
that's
right, let's
I
just
know.
play this just for the heck of it because I got nothing else to say about it except for I really enjoyed it.
He should come to our Boston show.
Oh yeah.
And you ruined the surprise.
Oh shit!
I was going to plan on doing that, but that's all right.
Oh.
I was going to plan on doing that, but that was. I guess it's so obvious, but yeah, I was going to reach out to that dude. But we'll see. Maybe he will. I don't know. I haven't done it yet, so now. Yeah.
I didn't think we'd actually follow through on something like that, but just he should if he sees it.
Well, I haven't yet, and now I might as well not because the surprise is ruined. But put it up. I really enjoyed this.
You're a cop. You just pretty much failed at everything else. Because you didn't want to become a cop. You knew everybody hated cops. Everybody hates cops. Yeah, they're just so scared to say it. Yeah, but you failed at everything. You failed at everything. And that's all you could do. Loser. Yeah, you sucked at hockey. No girls like you. Yeah, you're a criminal, too. Cops are criminals.
You sucked at hockey. You sucked at hockey. No girls liked you. And you're a criminal, too.
Couldn't skate backwards.
Yep, there you go.
Wow, that guy. I mean, you know, I'm prejudiced. I did not expect that to come.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it in.
Yeah,
the guy's wearing a Pat's hat, and you know, generally you do not hear those kind of words out of someone with kind of accent. So, I mean, you hear the part about sucking at hockey.
Yeah, right.
That you hear.
I mean, those are the 2 options. You become a hockey player, you become a cop.
Well, I mean,
I do think
I didn't suck at hockey. I didn't become a cop.
You look at how popular the BLM protests were, and I think like this sentiment is actually a lot wider spread than you would think. I mean, I knew like people in North Dakota don't like cops either.
Yeah.
And it's typically like, I mean, you see a lot of like, I mean, 9/11 changed a little bit too, and like you see people start wearing or putting like the blue line flags up when like the Dakota Access pipeline stuff started going on. You start to racialize the other, then you start to get more like I think pro-cop sentiment, but I think people typically don't like cops.
Yeah.
Let's go to the IMs for a moment, shall we? and we'll get into some clips. I don't know. You guys decide what you want to start with.
Okay.
Because maybe Eric Adams will start with that one just because.
Man.
Brooklyn Sue writes, Joe Manchin has been pulling his own package for a while now, if you know what I mean. Kimmy Boa. Good to see that despite his many legal troubles, Alex Jones still finds time to cover his ass over supporting Trump and sounding like he gargles rocks. Richard Warts. Sam has gone to the 1988 yuppie dad look.
I mean, it's fun to make fun of you, but I like the look.
All right. Well,
I'm okay with it. I feel like I saw images were sent to me, right?
Images were sent to you?
Yes.
In a manila file.
Bradley's like, I've taken these 8x10 glossies. You should take a look at these before you come into office, just so nothing gets you're not too disturbed.
Right. Black and white surveillance photos of you, like at the bodega,
right.
Right? We just need to check up on your look. And I liked the beard a little bit shorter than it is now. But I like.
Is it long now?
It's fairly long.
Yeah, I guess I got to trim it at one point, right? I don't know proper beard care.
Yeah, but I like the look. I do. I
will trim the beard at one point.
You look like a total, soy boy professor, but I like the look in general.
All right, soy boy professor. I mean, that's okay. I did at one point when I was wearing these glasses at one point over vacation. I think my sister said, you look a little soft.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, but the beard probably offsets that, right?
Yeah. Soy boy. Thank you. Appreciate that.
But professor,
Professor Soy Boy.
You got
Maryland mailman. I mentioned this before COVID. You did the random rush before I found you. Please do a random Sammy now. Let Binder find a piece of audio from this day in history 10 years, 5 years, 3 years ago. Why Binder? Let's see what Sam was saying on that day. It also promotes the archives. That's an interesting idea.
He's investigative. He's good at doing deep dives. Maybe that's why.
Been 11 years doing this show now. It's been 11 January 10th that I've just done this iteration of the show. Never mind during the Air America days. Wow. P.S. Emma, how about them Cowboys? That's right. I was born in D.C. and love America's team.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know what to say. Yeah, congratulations.
Harry in Appalachia. Sam, with regards to not shaving until Omicron is over, I decided to grow my hair out until COVID was over when we went home in 2020. It now reaches the base of my shoulder blades.
I basically did that, except I got my first haircut over Thanksgiving break.
Oh, you did? Yeah. Oh, I didn't notice because you got your man bun going there.
Yeah.
Left is deft. DeSantis has clearly never taken an STI test. Clearly, since he thinks the only time you test for virus is after symptoms show. Please clap.
Yeah, it's a HIPAA violation when my Tinder dates ask if I've been
exactly. Nerd Cheetah. Would you rather slap a monkey in the face with a dead fish or spend the entire day wearing only one shoe, leaving the other foot bare? What? Am I missing something with this?
What's the end? Is that the end of the question?
The fish has to be a big floppy one, no itty bitty perch, or I don't know.
Sounds like some sort of.
Yeah, there's some like Floriditarian. The problem is if we acknowledge that hurricanes are an issue, then people might want to stay home from work just because a hurricane is happening.
Right.
Yep. Well, actually,
or a tornado, like what we just experienced in Kentucky. That's dark.
On that note, speaking of Ron DeSantis's desire not to have tests, because if you start having tests, people are going to show up and they're going to be testing positive.
I mean, that's literally what we talk about him mimicking Trump all the time. That's literally what Trump said.
Well, Eric Adams, same theory about testing. And I'll say this. Like, I don't know what's happening at other schools. I mean, I have other parents who are expressing the same thing. And I know at least, within the context of the two different schools that my kids go to. But the absentee rate of students and teachers is well into the double digits. And because people are sick with COVID and they're not coming in. I mean, we don't want people who we know have COVID going to school, right? So why are we deluding ourselves by saying we shouldn't test? Because we know we'll find people who have COVID or going to schools. Here is Eric Adams, new mayor of New York, who I think it's just a matter of time before this guy, there's going
to be some investigation into like the shady nonsense that he's, been involved with, including his properties that he owns and other things. I mean, it's coming.
Oh, it's coming. And here he is, again, talking about his students, my students. I think it's endearing on some level, and I think it's also maybe a sign of some type of psychological disorder. But here he is talking about how he doesn't want my students to be taking my tests because then we're going to have, a problem.
Wouldn't mandated weekly testing for students, teachers, faculty be the safest way to keep the schools open? Why are you not doing that?
Because ideally that would be the safest way to do it. But you know what would happen?
Pause it. I just said it's very important to understand where he just started this. Ideally, it would be the safest way to do it. Oh, okay, so this is going to fall up, but we just don't have the resources. In an ideal world, that would be definitely, obviously, the safest way to do it. We don't have the resources. That's not where he's going with this. Go back a little bit.
Students, teachers, faculty be the safest way to keep the schools open? Why are you not doing that?
Because ideally that would be the safest way to do it. But you know what would happen? I don't want to lose some of my children. And the way we are doing it now, we are being successful in keeping down the rates low. And if we reach that moment that we have to have that mandatory testing, then we'll evaluate that again with our medical professionals. But I need my children in school, and any barrier to do that, I believe, is more harmful than helpful.
All right, so let's be clear. I need my children in school. Any barrier to do that is more harmful than helpful. In other words, anything that indicates that they have COVID and they need to stay home is a problem. Now,
when he said, I don't want to lose my kids, does he mean, like, he doesn't mean their health. He means he wants them to be in school, whether they have COVID or not.
Exactly. I don't want to lose any numbers in school. And this is just simply, it's bat crap crazy. Look, it is unclear at this stage with Omicron in American schools how much it travels within schools. It's unclear. I've seen competing studies that show it one way or another. It's also probably a function of, like, where are the schools located? What are the age of the students? My daughter comes home, she's like, she's got over 4,000 kids in her school. When they go into the hallway where lockers, like, you don't like just stroll through there.
Yeah.
It's like, the subway at rush hour. And she says, like, there's a big percentage of kids, they don't wear masks, or they just keep it down, and teachers go by and go, like, put your mask up. And we just don't know. We just don't know. But he's sitting there saying, like, I don't want to keep kids with COVID out of school because I need my children in the schools. Why?
There's also just very little understanding still of the effect of long COVID on children, too. I mean, it was 3 days ago out of the New York Times. COVID may raise the risk of diabetes in children. That's what the CDC is looking into right now. So, I mean, you don't want to lose your kids. I don't even see anything that's endearing about it. It's just so weird. Okay, then you could potentially lose them down the line if they contract it. We don't know yet, but that's some of what the research is indicating, that there are long health effects from this.
Should also say that tomorrow in New York, there is a school walkout that kids are doing. You got to search it online. I don't know exactly what time, but tomorrow at 4 p.m., I know, and that's after school, obviously. So maybe the walkout, I'm not sure what time the walkout's at. But there's a rally at 4 p.m. at Barclays, which is going to be not just students, but educators, families. And this is going to be outside. So For all you people who want to have the gotcha, how can you tell people to organize? We know outside there's virtually no transmission outside. I mean, unless you're like right up in someone's face without masks. So there it is. But I don't know. This in the schools is insanity. The game plan seems to be, both on a federal level and on a local level, at least in the context of New York, let's just see if we can ride it out. And, fingers crossed. And then, we'll know in a couple of months how many people ended up getting long COVID. How many people suffered neurological issues, how many people suffered increase in diabetes. I mean, we'll get a sense of that.
Finnish health minister estimating that it could be the long COVID symptoms could be one of the major health issues that their system faces, and cited 4,000 studies, and you see numbers everywhere from 50% of adults see symptoms, and I still feel like some weirdness from having it, and 2% of kids. So I hope all these kids that are getting it, people feel that like cool with that on their consciences.
I mean, it's really it's really nuts to take this perspective. I mean, I get it.
So he's been mayor for 10 days. How many gaffes are we gonna get?
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. I'm not talking about gaffes. This is not a gaffe. This is a policy that is effed up.
Okay, how many? Yes, fine. We'll do one bucket of effed up policies and one bucket of insane things that he says publicly.
Yes, I think we're going to need multiple buckets for this guy. I'm less concerned with, a mayor being, quirky, and I'm more upset about the idea that, like, hey, wait a second. Dude, are you really building your mayor? You're like, look at what we did. We were able to keep the schools open by, of course, inflicting a tremendous amount of health damage on teachers and students for years and years to come. He won't mention the second part of that. So, here is, this is weird. What's the best way to get a profile about you in the Washington Post? Well, dish out a bunch of BS and have a really unfunny program on Fox News, apparently. But this is a weird thing. Like, even like Geraldo Rivera was like, wait, what are you saying? There is apparently in Australia, and I guess the Supreme Court of Australia said, like, how do you pronounce his last name? Jovic?
Novak Djokovic.
Djokovic is being detained in Australia. He's not vaccinated. He wants to play in the Australian Open. They will not let him, but now he's got the clear, at least from the court. It's conceivable. My understanding is that the one of the ministers in Australia of, I don't know, of their interior, I can't remember what it was, could basically say, well, we're going to pull your visa because you're not vaccinated. But this is Gutfield, and it's unclear to me what he's saying here. But he seems to be really against any government, particularly in this country, protecting its citizens.
It could go on indefinitely in Australia, which is why America is so special, because our politicians know this is a country born from rising up. This country was born from having said, this is it. We're not doing this anymore. We're throwing the tea into the river. We are a country of fighters, and we will do it again by February 1st. Because you know what? We can. We got the Second Amendment. We run this country.
Well, to your point, though, Geraldo, Australia certainly had that reputation for being free and wild. Why hadn't there been an uprising?
First of all, I can't imagine what Greg was just saying about the Second Amendment and the February 1st. I don't get it at all. I don't know what he's threatening.
No, you didn't. No, I wasn't threatening. Geraldo, let me explain it to you. The reason why this is a free country is because we have the right to bear arms.
Oh, well, let me say, I sailed my boat to Darwin, Australia, Northern Australia.
The reason why this is a free country is because we have the right to bear arms?
He lost track of what he wanted to say there.
Is that what the Tea Party was? Like just shooting a bunch of Brits at the harbor? I think that was a protest and a riot. And I didn't hear Gutfield have the same energy when the Black Lives Matter protests were going. This is what makes America great. I think that I can be persuaded of that as long as you have that kind of consistency.
Yeah, I don't think arms really had much to do with the tea protests.
No,
otherwise, they would have been.
damage.
Yeah, they were mad about the customs regulations and wanted to be able to sell stuff.
He was trying to.
What's happening on February 1st?
I don't know. I mean, like, but how did he get from Djokovic not being able to play in the Australian Open feasibly, although I guess he can now, to the Second Amendment in the United States?
Because we don't put up with that stuff because we're more rebellious.
Yeah, but except Australia's supposed to be free and wild. You know, all the surfing there and criminals. I don't get it.
It really just looks like there's any opportunity they get to sort of like flash their bona fides for the Second Amendment or something to that effect, you know, is the way that they move up the chain and at Fox
All
News.
protests, like just inserting guns into any sort of protest throughout history as if like the Second Amendment has nothing to do with the Boston Tea Party.
You know what it also strikes me? Just put a screenshot of that up there because it's weird. It looks like the five is in 5 different places. And what I don't understand is why doesn't Greg get his semi-automatic weapon and force those damn overlords at Fox News to put them all in the same room? They all look like they're in different places. Why would they do that?
Odd.
I mean, oddly, we're in the same place. Yeah, we are. But we're in different screens. So it's possible. But I got to imagine that at Fox, I've definitely seen them do a 5-shot before.
That looks distanced, yeah.
You know why we're in the same place? It's because I pulled up on you with my sawed-off shotgun and I said, no more.
Not in this country. You will take my 2-shot away when you pry it from my cold
We
dead
need
hands.
this in-person chemistry.
Turning off the voicemail, allowing your phone calls. You know, I think most people who know this, who watch this program, listen to this program, know that I spent a lot of time on AM Talk Radio, and that I used to spend a lot of time listening to AM Talk Radio. Dave Ramsey was one of the guys I would listen to just to sort of because I was fascinated by Dave Ramsey. He does a show where he shames people for being in debt, tells them that you shouldn't be in debt, and encourages people not to carry a mortgage, to pay it off, live on rice and beans till you pay it off. I mean, I guess, you know, people can live a lifestyle the way they want, where everything is an individual choice in his world, and then he's able to monetize that and build an empire. He's become a multi-millionaire off of it. But here he is, and it's also, there's a lot of God Squad stuff involved in this.
Of course.
And here he is. And this is what's nice. Because if you want to be incredibly exploitive of people, if you want to divorce the concept of empathy from your economic system, if you want to be able to have a moment where you can exploit people for money, and you feel like that conflicts with your Christianity, like would Jesus exploit an economic opportunity or exploit people for economic gain, or would Jesus not? Well, the answer might surprise you, according to Dave Ramsey.
Okay, I own rental property, single-family homes, among many other properties that we own. And if I raise my rent
Pause it 1 second.
the market...
I also, I'm not 100% sure about this. I know that Sean Hannity got into this business in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. My guess is, I don't know this for fact, it's pure speculation, so I want to just plant that flag there. And so, you know, and if I'm wrong, apologies. But if I was to speculate, people like Ramsey, I don't know if he has specifically, when they own that many properties and single family homes, my guess is foreclosures. They went in and bought a bunch of these during the 2008 foreclosure in the wake of the financial crisis. Again, Jesus would probably do it too.
It's a good deal.
I mean, look, when we
Jesus is not going to turn down a good deal on a foreclosed home.
When we talk about arbitrage, what do you think that whole water into wine thing was about?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody, water. How much are you going to get for a glass 16 ounce of water? You're going to get $1, maybe $1.50, $2 in New York City. But 16 ounces of wine, you're going to get 3 or 4 times that. So here, continue.
Okay, I own rental property, single family homes, among many other properties that we own. And if I raise my rent to be market rate, that does not make me a bad Christian. I did not displace the person out of that house if they can no longer afford it. The marketplace did. The economy did.
The invisible hand.
The ratio of the income that they earned to their housing expense displaced them. I didn't cause any of that. And so you are not displacing them. You're taking too much credit for what's going on. If they need to move to a cheaper house because they can't afford, they're going to move to a lesser house. Because if they move, they're going to pay market rent.
Interesting. So to be a good Christian, what you do is, it's irrelevant what your costs are associated with that house. It's really just sort of the invisible hand determines what the market is.
How do we not know that the invisible hand is not Jesus at work?
I mean, it could be.
Right?
I mean, it could also be, to be fair, it could be the other parts of the Holy Trinity, right? I don't know. I'm getting into
Spirit,
the Holy Spirit does determine market rates.
I'm getting into the deep end here.
Yeah.
All along.
But think about this. Think about an ideology that allows you to both exploit the situation. You didn't say like my costs have gone up, I had to raise my rent. I wasn't forced to do it. It was just like the market dictated to me that it did. Think about like an ideology where that is actually in line with Christian principles. In fact, on some level, it sounds like if you don't allow the market to dictate, you're being not a good Christian.
Well, it's unnatural, right? I mean, you are not going by the will of God.
I mean, and if you actually charge less than market rates, you're making other Christians feel bad, and that's wrong. So, I just find that absolutely fascinating. That is quite a religion you got there. Good thing we got that. Start to run out of reasons for a religion if it doesn't in any way inhibit your greed. If the market's there, it's not greed. I guess, right? I mean, what?
Tell that to the money changers. They should have been like, "Hey, just the market.
It's just the market. It's just the market, right?" If you didn't have Anthem Blue Shield Platinum insurance plan, writes Bourbon Socialist, Jesus would absolutely send your blind ass home. Jesus obviously wanted to incentivize hard work. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam and Emma. It's John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. How are you, John?
Hi, John.
I'm okay. Yeah, Happy New Year and welcome back, Emma.
Thank you. Good to be back, actually.
All right.
It is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Sam, there's been many times when you referred to the 2018 Wisconsin Assembly elections as an example of an extreme gerrymander. The context is extremely important in referencing of statistical information. So let's look at the numbers and the context of what the election.
Are you correcting me? Are you correcting me, John?
Yes.
All right.
So Democrats won 53% of the popular vote, while Republicans won 45%. And yet the Republicans held 64% of the seats compared to 36% for the Democrats.
So wait a second. So wait a second. And what have I been saying?
No, you got that part right.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Got, right. So So the gerrymander is responsible for this to a degree, but the Republicans did not run candidates in 29 of the total 99 seats. So the numbers are going to be skewed towards them not receiving a high amount of votes statewide.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so Democrats also did not run candidates in 8% of those races, in 8 of those races also.
Okay.
So perhaps a better analogy would be the 2012 federal House race, where Democrats won by 1,362,000 votes, yet Republicans held a 33-seat advantage, which translates to an 8% Republican advantage in seats held, while Democrats won 1% of the total votes, and Democrats would have even had a larger advantage in total votes cast if they would have run candidates for every seat. There were 24 seats where they did not run candidates, while Republicans didn't run seats in 14 seats. While the overturning of gerrymanders in Pennsylvania and North Carolina definitely helped Democrats win seats in the 2020 House elections, the Democrats won the popular vote by 3.1% and a 2% advantage in actual members. So that's actually going back to where it's almost even. That's with the same, almost the exact same gerrymander.
So are you suggesting that the gerrymandering is not accounting for any differences? I mean,
No.
And let me ask you this, John. Why didn't you? So we have 21 races in Wisconsin, which were uncontested, a net of 21 races. 29, but then you said 8 Democratic uncontested, right? So 21 net races where Republicans didn't get votes. And do you have a sense of how that would shake out if they did get those votes?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can compare it to. I mean, they mostly didn't run in Milwaukee and Madison, so yeah, you can look at national numbers. I was just looking at Biden.
Well, I'm
numbers.
just looking at what's going. Okay. So you can extrapolate that way.
Right. So let's say in Milwaukee, Biden wins usually by about 40%. In Madison, he wins. I mean, look in all of Dane County, he wins by 50%. So yeah, it's usually 75-25.
Yeah. Well, what I'm getting at is that you could have run those numbers, John.
Yeah, but it would have been hypothetical.
No, it would have been hypothetical, but it would have given us a better sense, and you just decided not to do it. So you just I'm a little bit. In other words, if you're going to come and try and knock me down a peg, which is okay, I know that's you do that. It would have been nice if you put in a little bit more effort.
Okay, how about this one?
All right.
How many counties do you think Biden won in Wisconsin in 2020 out of the 72 total counties?
How many counties?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 20.
No, it's pretty close. 14.
Okay.
So Trump won 58 of those counties, but they're all small rural counties.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the point is.
Have you seen that map? Well, have you seen that map that went around with Trump, where most of the country voted for Trump?
Mm-hmm.
The actual physical country.
Yes.
The physical country,
Mostly
not
red. Very
not the
red.
people.
Right.
Right.
So I want to go back to Wisconsin. In swing states where large cities vote overwhelmingly Democratic, they can prop up wins in statewide elections and senatorial and presidential races. But since there's a vast amount of the state is rural or suburban, Republicans have a built-in advantage towards representation. For example, currently the representational split of the federal House is 5-3 to Republicans. In Governor Evers had a commission make maps to be submitted a few months ago, and one map was a 5-3 map, and the other map was a 6-2 Republican map. So Republicans submitted their 6-2 map with only the Democratic seats being in Milwaukee and Madison. And the last map that they put up by Governor Evers was also a 6-2 Republican map. So the Democrats are very likely going to lose a seat in southwest Wisconsin, which Ron Kine, who is retiring currently, represents the 3rd District. And the Evers map that was adopted in mid-December had a 6-2 split, with the 3rd District being a R+9 district and the 1st District being a R+8 district. There's also a lot of talk about the importance of passing voting legislation, and I agree that this is important to pass the John Lewis Act and the Freedom to Vote Act, but I also think it's extremely important to pass a law that will clarify to some degree and change the Electoral Count Act of 1887. There's been a lot of press about how McConnell and John Thune are open to reforming the act, but many activists don't want to talk about passing this as a separate reform.
What would that separate reform do? What would that do?
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, essentially, it would make it more clear. I mean, in my vision would be, it would totally say that the vice president. I mean, I think this is pretty clear by the law, except that there's a lot of controversy about the law. I mean, even
wait. But John, you're talking around it. You're saying that reform would lock state legislatures in terms of certifying the final vote? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will say that they already did that with some of the safe harbor provisions.
I understand what you're talking about. Okay.
But I mean, they just need more clarity. I mean, in my book, the biggest problem is going to be certification, and that's like really hard.
All right. Well, let's worry about that in 2023. Okay.
Okay. I mean, because, well, I mean, yeah, okay, but I mean, I just think that I just feel that, like, there's a lot of people talking about this, and I just like the John Lewis and the Freedom of Vote Act. I guess what really kind of bothers me, I mean, I want these things to be passed, and I hope that they are passed. But I mean, I don't like the talk about, like, that you can't, if these things aren't passed, then our democracy is gone. I mean, you hear that all the time. I mean,
yeah, I know what you're saying. There's a little bit of hyperbole that you don't appreciate, because when you dig into the numbers, you think this is still doable, and you don't want people to be defeatist. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the call, John.
Okay, all right. But I mean, can I mention a few of the things, like in Texas? All
right, well, dude, we've been nine minutes. Let's just try to again later. Let me move on.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
Sounds good, Sam.
Okay.
Thank you.
I always appreciate hearing from John. 9 minutes in, and he didn't. I'm a little annoyed he didn't do more of that work on the. I'm not gonna lie about the. Just a little bit annoyed about that. So I mean, it's okay. John, I'm not.
A for effort, John.
More than A for effort, but I'm a little bit annoyed. I'm not John's boss. He can do what he wants. It's just that, like,
he's not mad. He's just disappointed.
I'm disappointed. Exactly. I'm not mad. I'm just a little disappointed. Yeah. Calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I did call in to be defeatist. This is Kowalski from Nebraska.
Oh, Kowalski from Nebraska. How are you? I am told that you want to give your tickets away for the big live show.
How dare you?
Oh, I was kind of hoping to keep that under wraps. No one needed to know that.
Never mind.
Luckily, the show's not live.
There's a lot of
somebody who deserves them should get them. So, yeah, some nurse in Massachusetts. I don't care who.
All right. We'll figure out a way of doing that.
Sweet. So, anyways, Emma, glad you're back. The show has been basically a ship without a captain since you've been gone. So that's good.
That makes sense.
Thank you for
no
that.
Sports talk. We've been totally lost. I don't even know if there's even going to be a Super Bowl. That's how lost we are.
Well, I mean,
we'll see how the Pats do on Sunday.
It's
Saturday.
actually pretty crazy. It's supposed to be at SoFi Stadium, the newly constructed, like, gorgeous stadium in. I mean, it's problematic how it was built, but in LA, and since there's like all these indoor mask mandates and stuff, which makes sense, it doesn't seem like it may not happen there because the players have to play without masks. Anyway. Keep going.
Just wanted to give quick ag update since I didn't do it last week. Basically, commodity prices are remaining extremely strong. Inputs are still fairly high, but the price of stuff should be able to outdo the inputs, so that shouldn't be really a problem on the farmer side of things. The biggest news right now, however, is the Colorado River appears to be dying. A little hyperbolic, but it is actually quite a catastrophe. If what I'm reading correctly, basically a lot of acres are getting pulled out of irrigated production, which means they will have to be left fallow. The biggest issue with this is that is where most of our veggies are made. So if for some reason the decision is made to let any of that go foul over any of like the support to the dairy industry, would make no sense like in the short term or long term. But I just thought your viewers should be really aware of that, and it may be more important now than ever to be planting your own gardens because insecurity in that area, especially with water, could be detrimental to the food supply broadly. Again, not enough for the United States to suffer and starve, but we are a massive exporter, and we will let the third world starve before we let our own country starve.
All right, well, Kowalski, thank you for the uplifting call.
Hey, I said I was here to call in to be defeatist. I'm many things, but I'm not a liar.
There you go. Kowalski from Nebraska, thanks for the call. Grandstanding GOP oppression party. I would appreciate it if John from San Antonio would stop calling us Wisconsin. It's Wisconsin. Have a blessed day. All right, one more quick phone call. We'll go back to some clips. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, it's Ronald Reagan.
Well, look at that. We had 3 regulars in a row today.
What a fire episode, as the kids say.
Yeah, totally on fire.
Sorry about
that. No,
sorry about
just
that.
fire.
It's on fire.
Nope.
It's like burning up. It's like embers and ashes. Right.
It's fire.
I was going to say, you've always said this thing about Alex Jones, that if he didn't exist, the CIA would invent him.
Yes.
And I think I feel the same way about Dave Ramsey. Because his whole thing is like poor people call in and then he shames them about their lifestyle.
Yep.
And the whole entire thing is that, everything that's happening to you is your own fault. And that, to the extent that economic anxiety exists, it's because of consumer choice. You just have a TV that's too expensive, and that, and so it's your fault. And so it just has, and I think a lot of wealthy people listen to it too, because it's very comforting to think that
oh yeah, every dollar I have because I deserve it.
Right.
Because if poor people call in and Ramsey says you don't deserve this, the reason why you're poor is because of your own actions, then the inverse of the converse is that, well, if I'm wealthy, it's because of my own actions. I deserve it.
Yeah.
Right. His universe is one of total justice, where there's never anything that's unfair. Everything is completely deserved and earned. And so, for the wealthy to listen and hear all these dumb poor people call and complain, and then he likes to dig until he finds that, oh, they got a car that was a little too expensive, or something like that. It's very cathartic, I think, for rich people and for poor people who maybe just they don't find it cathartic, but they buy into that sort of self-blame. And it's all nonsense. He's terrible.
Yeah, he's the worst. Well, not the worst.
Anyways,
one of the worst.
There's probably worse. he's up there. Oh, and also, by the way, like he's got like a whole, seminar racket. He sells expensive books and things like that to teach people how to be, more like him.
Yep.
So he's just his own kind of grifter too. But anyways, have a nice day.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank
Ronald
you.
Reagan calling in about Dave Ramsey. There you go. Very good. Let's go back to the IMs. Shane from Canada. Remember, since asymptomatic rates are around 50%, it's usually a good idea to multiply COVID numbers by 2 or 1.5 to get a better picture. There's no doubt. And a lot of people, I think, are self-diagnosing. You got a lot more home tests now. Sam's sexy beard. Hey, Emma, what's more surprising to you? That Flores got fired or that Judge still has his job? Although your GM did retire today, so maybe your new GM will fire him unless they make Judge GM and HC go to full Giants.
Yeah, I mean, if they make Abrams, they're considering promoting in-house. Kevin Abrams, the assistant general manager from 1999. Like, this is just, the Giants are an archaic organization, and it's being run by the son of, like, the owner that thinks that it can all be, a team can be built like it was in 1985. But the league's changed. You have Mahomes, you have Josh Allen. It's built off explosive plays. And the Giants have been the worst, one of the 3 worst franchises in the league since they won the Super Bowl 10 years ago, haven't won a playoff game since then. So point being, I'm not shocked that they are likely retaining Judge if the new GM doesn't fire him, because that's the way the Mara has run things. With that said, Flores should not have been fired, and Stephen Ross is just this like absentee owner who doesn't even live in Miami and doesn't care. And it's not shocking to me, I guess, that Black coaches get a much shorter leash, no matter how well they perform under circumstances like having Tua Tagovailoa as your quarterback who's not good. So, anyway, I'm more surprised about Flores.
Didn't recognize a single name that you referenced.
And don't write in, please, and be like, oh, Tua, his completion percentage is so high. Oh, it's because he throws 3-yard passes down the middle to the running back every time. He seems like a great guy, nice kid, not a good quarterback. Thank you, good sir, or madam.
Emma is back.
I am back.
Yep, there you go. Take that.
I lost a lot of money betting on the Patriots and Chargers yesterday.
Emma comes in today. She's like, New York State now allows
mobile betting.
And I didn't do so well on my inaugural day.
No, I really thought I was going to have like a great Sunday, because at this point in the season, I really do have, I feel like I have a good feel for how the teams are. Nope, not the case. So your Pats totally screwed me over.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
Sam,
I'll be back for the playoffs.
Sam, I always go with trusty old number 2 on the beard trimmer to keep it clean and tight. I'll keep that in mind. Sam Cedar Beard Apple Oracle. Thoughts on the Sweet Tango? To be honest with you, I have not spent a lot of time eating that apple, so I cannot give you much of a review.
Sweet Tango?
Yeah. I've never come across that much here. I'm aware of the apple, but I have not really come across it. Juicy. Sam's going to come in a few weeks with a scar over one eye and an eye patch over the full-on stop dystopia pilled mode as a consequence of this nonstop nihilistic news cycle we've been experiencing. In addition to the beard, Sam's going to come in a few weeks with a scar. I don't get it. Joe Snuffy. Sam, I can't help but feel you haven't fully committed to this whole midlife crisis thing. Sure, you grew a beard and got new glasses, but when are you going to buy that sports car or motorcycle? Come on, man, that existential dread over the brevity of life and your lack of accomplishments isn't going to ignore itself. Well, I will say this. I feel like I probably went through that in my late 40s on some level. I'm not sure how it manifested, but I'm at that age now where it's like, F it. I don't care. That's what it really is. Although I have contemplated, I have now my Subaru is now five years old. And I am thinking that the delta between a new Subaru and a used Subaru is probably smaller than it's been in a long time, because used cars are going for a lot more than normal.
Oh, so you're thinking of selling?
I'm thinking of selling the Subaru and then getting maybe a hybrid Crosstech. But I
What's
still
a Crosstech?
It's like just another smaller Subaru.
Oh.
But
So
it's
yours
probably
is
one.
not a hybrid now, but you're considering getting a hybrid.
Yeah, they didn't have hybrids in 2016.
Oh.
So, I mean, I guess that constitutes maybe a midlife crisis.
I don't think so.
It seems.
I mean, it seems.
Well, the Crosstech is a pretty sexy car.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's not the Subaru, it's like a dad car. Crosstech is more like.
Maybe you'll get it in like a
active dad
funky
car.
color, right? Like,
Yeah,
get it like lime green.
Yeah.
I'm here.
BB Teach, hello all. Given the impact of home ownership on wealth, I would love to see you all talk with someone about the implications of reverse mortgages. Seems like they are undoing generations of wealth accumulation by the middle class. I need to find somebody who's done work on this. My sense is those reverse mortgages are a pretty bad deal, although, and I haven't really looked into these, the only time where I contemplated making any sense was in a situation where, maybe somebody's imminently going into a nursing home and you need to have, assets drained to, before you can get into for Medicaid, for nursing home. I don't know. But in the main, I think those are problematic. But you don't do that unless you're desperate, I think, for the most part. Left-handed stranger. Hi, Emma. Something I've been thinking about lately is, what if those of us who own homes try our hardest not to sell to any financial firm or realtor firm and sell only to an actual human being? People tend to only talk about buying boycotts. But what about selling boycotts? I hope one day we can fix it on a proper legal sense so that some boycott would not be needed. But maybe it could be something to try and sell to a human being if you can. To be absolutely clear, I'm talking about fighting back against the jerks that buy up houses at 20% above market, turning everything into a rental property in the company that never sells that house.
Yeah. Was that a question for me, or did it say, hey, Emma, or MR Crew? I forget, whatever. I thought you said hi, Emma.
I think it was just more hi, Emma, and then just
yeah.
all of us.
I mean, I think it's just hard because people need loans. So, I mean, I don't know.
It's hard to know if people will, are going to forego when they're selling a house. They're going to want to sell their house.
And there's also just some people feel anxious and want their money, and sometimes there's like a mistrust if it's an interpersonal buy, I guess.
Between the 101 and the 5, let's go O's and Ravens and Caps. Great interview, guys. Don't forget about the mask fitter with the beard, Sam. Fixthemask.com. They work really well with KF94s. KF94s. I have not had a KF. I've had KN95s. I haven't seen KF94s. Attorney Andrew. Sam, I'm writing to correct some legal analysis from last week. Okay. First, the National Labor Relations Board deciding who constitutes an employee under the National Labor Relations Act will not have any binding immediate effect on other rights and remedies available to employees as defined in other statutes. The interpretation of an employee under the National Labor Relations Act does not mandate that said employee receive Social Security or unemployment. I did not know that. Instead, it provides the rights and remedies under the National Labor Relations Board Act, I should say. Indeed, because some courts oddly treat the definition of employee differently under the NLRA and the Fair Labor Standards Act, you could have a situation where gig workers can bargain collectively but have no federal right to minimum wage and overtime, though they could bargain for wages and overtime. Second, people seeking preliminary injunctions against COVID vaccine mandates on religious grounds are not arguing that all vaccines violate their religion. Instead, they are arguing that the COVID vaccines are made from aborted fetal tissue and that taking the vaccine constitutes an endorsement of abortion. Interesting. I did not realize that. Lots of Trump and Bush judges are entering preliminary injunctions in these cases on the grounds that making an individual choose between their religion and their job is an irreparable harm, i.e. that it cannot be fixed with money down the line. It's an absurd because it's been the case when individuals are fired and they allege discrimination, they don't get their job back while the case is pending. Reinstatement could be a remedy at trial, but not before trial. In other words, you don't need to do an injunction. We do have in our legal system a way in which to compensate people after the fact. Valley Girl, thank you for that, Attorney Andrew. How can people who are anti-mask, anti-vaccine say they support the troops? Can't they see a connection of working together? You wouldn't send a single Marine into battle. The Marines fight together and stay together. How can people who are anti-mask... Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
They aren't Marines.
They aren't Marines. Help Honda Santis. Dolphins in the tuna net. Great analogy, Sam. GS9, Sam. Sam, if you love postal banking so much, why don't you just marry it? In all seriousness, have you heard of the anarcho-communist podcast Sea of Thieves? Could be an interesting casual Friday discussion. Sea of Thieves, nuts fit in your mouth. Yeah. What a long way to go for that. Justin, Sam, could you also bring up the Faircloth Act of 1998 and how it relates with your guest as well? Sorry, just seeing that now. Jonathan Armstead, I watched a movie on HBO Max that Majority Report fans would like. It's called The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain. It's based on a real incident where a 68-year-old African-American man in White Plains, New York, accidentally set off his medic alert bracelet. When police came to do a wellness check, he said he was okay and asked them to leave. They didn't believe he was alone, and things escalated horribly. It opens with the quote from Chris Hayes' A Colony in a Nation. It's worth watching. Interesting.
That was such a creative one. I'm still not over that.
Yeah. Sounding for noses. It's a real shame Florida's letting those tests go to waste. I personally find sticking things deep in my nose rather exhilarating. All right. Socialist Bear. Can Emma please explain what's going on with the Chicago Bears? I'm a local resident, but I don't follow sports, but it seems like something very good or very bad is happening to the Bears. And Emma, is the only sports nerd I know.
Well, I mean, they fired their horrible head coach. I mean, Matt Nagy, I've always totally ruined Trubisky, in my opinion, and was going to ruin Justin Fields. And they fired their GM. But the real issue is that the president of the Bears, who's been there for 20 years, is the one making all of these hires. But also very good news for me, because thank you so much for trading your first-round pick to the Giants. So now the Giants have the 5th and 7th overall pick in the draft next year. Appreciate that.
I was going to say, I thought the Bears got beat by the Vikings recently.
They did. I was getting a little nervous because if they could have gone all the way to pick 12 if they won that game, and then the Vikings came back and won yesterday. So it was good news for us Giants fans.
What should we play here? Anybody?
Oh.
None of these just strike me as terribly exciting.
Okay. Well, I mean, then turn off the stream, everybody.
No, what do we got?
I guess Trump on OAN.
Yeah, this was funny. This is from last week. Glenn Beck, apparently on air and going to a commercial break, gets word of something and integrates that into his ad, which, you know, kudos. Here we go. This is Glenn Beck, just from the other day.
I've been diagnosed with COVID, so I'm in quarantine in my house. I also started a diet about 3 or 4 days ago, and I'm determined not to break it this time. The thing that has been helping me here is Built Bars. Built Bars, they are...
There you go.
Promo code BECK15.
Yeah. That's how much he's going to lose, I think. He needs to lose 15, or is that...
It's how long the diet's going to last.
Yeah. COVID. Working in that COVID... the COVID into the ad.
Yeah, he didn't necessarily need to reveal that information, but...
Well, he wanted to explain why he wasn't coming into work that day and how apparently he can't eat, so they're just sending him all those bars.
Why is he not in work if it's not a big deal?
Yeah, it's weird. Why would he stay home? Why not give it to your employees? A little early Christmas gift.
Herd immunity at the Blaze.
Which one of these should we do number one?
Yeah.
It's like an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, play the classics.
Exactly. Donald Trump is talking to One America Network. What is it?
One America News Network.
One
But
America News Network.
They took the final N out.
Oh, I was wondering. Okay, it's OAN
it's
now.
cleaner. Take the before the Facebook.
He's
Drop
talking
the
to Christina Bobb, and this is from last Friday. He is looking at the coverage of January 6th, and what is it that sticks in his craw about it? I give you former President Donald Trump.
Everything was going beautifully, and then the election got rigged and stolen from the American people. And by the way, that's the reason they went in massive numbers. They don't cover the numbers of people. They always show the Capitol with a very small, just a tiny percentage of the people that were there. They never show helicopter pictures of that incredible crowd because it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken before. I've never had a crowd. I've never seen a crowd that big.
It was massive.
It was the real number. I won't say because it'll be a headline. Oh, he exaggerated the number. The real number was over that sacred number. Okay,
Yeah.
You know what that number was, right?
I do.
And I don't even talk about that, and they don't talk about it. I don't go with it. But I'll tell you, the crowd itself was the biggest crowd I've ever. And I've spoken before the biggest crowds. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken by far, by numerous times, I think. And nobody ever shows the pictures of that. They show me speaking, but they never show who I'm speaking to because they don't want. That was anger over a rigged election that got that many people to go to D.C. A tiny percentage, and I mean tiny, like less than 1%, went to the Capitol. That's all it was. A tiny percentage.
The sacred number.
So,
what is the sacred number?
I'm looking on Twitter for theories of what the sacred number is. I feel like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure, but I think it is 1 million. I think he's saying 1 million.
Oh.
There was 1 million people.
I don't know why that's a sacred number. Maybe
Sacred
that's
number,
in 2
it's-
Corinthians or something like
It's
that.
69, bro.
1 million people. The sacred number. I love how she's like, oh, I know what that is.
Oh yes. I speak the crazy.
There's 442,069 people there.
The sacred number.
The sacred numbers. Yeah. I mean, so he's basically saying that the lack of wide shots is the liberal conspiracy against him.
Well, it's a nice bookend, right? Because wasn't that the problem with the inauguration, too?
He spent too much time zooming in on the people attacking the cops and storming the doors at the Capitol to see how actually many people were there total.
You can't tell. Now, he said 1% went into the Capitol. Right. If the sacred number is 1 million, 10,000 people stormed the Capitol? Is that what he's arguing? It's a lot. The sacred stormers of the Capitol. Is that, I mean, like, how did she respond so quickly? Yeah, no, I know what that is.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, she doesn't even need to know. She just needs to yes and.
We're not going to say the number. You never say the sacred number. That's the way it stays sacred.
That's the number one rule of MAGA love. Don't say the sacred number.
Sacred number is Obama's crowd size, says Christo. In the first inaugural. Calling from a 702 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. Hey, Emma. Hey, man. It's Bro Flamingo from Las Vegas.
Bro Flamingo from Las Vegas. It's all the regs calling in today.
Yeah. I got to say, well, Happy New Year's, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. There's a couple things on my mind. The first one is, I'm not sure because if it's the nature of the business, like of the video game industry, it's not as taken as seriously as, say, kind of the other industries out there. I'm sure Matt Lick has known about this, though, where, like, is the Blizzard's Activision CEO, Bobby Kotick, has just been, like, literally like a psychopathic misogynist, fostered a suicide under his watch, covered up a whole bunch of stuff, partnering up with, like, Francis Townsend, a torture apologist for the Bush administration, all types, like, literally like a supervillain. I wish I could make this up, but still hasn't resigned, still no punishment, still no justice, and it's just kind of crazy how he's just been sitting out there and just no accountability, even though all this stuff has come out about him. It's actually kind of stunning. I'm surprised you guys haven't picked up on it. And then
I've heard about it a little bit, but not much. But I do think that there is something to the idea that I think people don't because it's video games. Maybe people aren't as sensitive to these things. I don't know why.
Honestly, Sam, because I swear to God, if it was just I completely agree with that, because that's my only conclusion. Because if it was any other industry, it would be like, what the hell is going on here? But it's just like. But I think it's just like, but it's a lot of just bro culture stuff, a lot of online, just crazy. And then kind of the second thing I want to transition to is just, also I went to a school board meeting, by the way, guys. The long and short of it is I saw, first of all, lots of police there. Wow. Very, 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 very crazy. Wow. Second thing, the MAGA people and all the anti-vax stuff, very friendly with the police. That's another thing that I saw. As a matter of fact, one of my colleagues there, I had to walk her to a car, and when I was walking her to a car, I saw the police and the MAGA head just having a friendly chat, just, that type of stuff. However, though, I'm not a very funny guy, but there was one guy who was going up there in front of the school board, and, he was going on some type of rant. Everybody was rolling their eyes. I just made out a fart noise, like, everybody just laughed, and he just left the stage. It was funny. But
all right, well, thank you for that.
Sorry about that. But then, and the last thing, I'm sorry. There was a shooting in Denver. Right. And the reason why it was very, I have family in Denver, so that's why it was very important to me. But the guy, complete alt-righter, clearly showing signs of he literally wrote his manifesto as like a fiction, whatever you want to call it. Completely radicalized from like Mike Cernovich. Some guy named Zuby, I guess, gave him a platform to talk about his crazy stuff. I always kind of talk about these things just to show even from a guy like this to the January 6th, there's still there has to be investigations into people with alt-right and white supremacist sides. Even the Ahmaud Arbery case, this literally took months for them to even start prosecuting these guys because a former DA and then another DA and then another DA was trying to cover up, for Ahmaud Arbery's killers because apparently he works at the police department. They need all-in laws to break these guys up. They need all-in laws to see who these guys are talking to because at the end of the day, they really are holding up democracy and any type of leftist agenda that they want because for whatever reasons. And I think it's very, very important that, among other things, we have on the agenda, but we have to really start just pointing out these guys a lot. Leftist best guys, Happy New Year.
Thanks. I appreciate the call.
As to the video games, I think that's a problem with maybe entertainment in general. Video games, especially have those bro cultures, and it's a very male, a new industry. But you see that in Silicon Valley too. Yeah, you hear that in finance. The NFL, you hear. I can't remember. Was it the Reds or the Washington football team with the harassing of the cheerleaders and stuff like that? It's like any industry where people are willing to basically dedicate their life to that as an art form or a passion, they can be taken advantage of very easily. And video games are just a new version of that.
Well, I mean, also with the NHL, that story about the player that was raped by the assistant videographer, and then it was covered up by the Blackhawks organization. If he was a young 18, 19-year-old hockey player, and then if you speak out, you could lose your job in this career. That's the end for you.
Eesh. Calling from a 631 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Who's this?
Hi. I don't know. Okay. I am calling. I'm a New York City resident currently. I'm concerned with a certain thing that the public does not know about. I work for a private company that works for the sanitation company of New York. Sanitation Department of New York City.
Okay.
I'm a climate scientist by trade. I have a master's and PhD in atmospheric science.
Are you looking for some type of anonymity? Is that why you're not going to give me? You're not saying your name?
I'm working for a subcontractor.
Okay.
I'm working for a subcontractor. So basically, I just don't want to, ruin my job.
All right. Yeah. We'll call you Bob.
Really
how's that, Bob?
That's perfect.
Bob.
Bob. Yes.
Okay.
I'm really concerned with what's going on at the Fresh Kills landfill, if you guys are familiar with that. Currently, that's on Staten Island. It's the largest decommissioned landfill in the eastern part of the United States.
Yeah,
It contains roughly 6,000 acres. The sanitation department of New York City is doing a terrible job keeping this thing maintained and up to date. Recently, as of 2019, we were selling the gas, the natural gas that is produced, the methane that's produced at the landfill, to Con Ed for money for the city. It was making about roughly $3.5 million annually for the city in profit. As of 2019, the manager or the person who runs this site will not be named, but is also a megalomaniac, I will say, shut down the purification plant in 2019 abruptly without really any sort of reasoning. So the $3 million for the city, that went out the window in 2019. And coincidentally, the company that I work for is the monitoring and maintaining all the well fields, basically, in this landfill. So we do all the maintenance work. We tell them what's breaking, what needs to be repaired immediately, what we can kind of Band-Aid and stuff. My job is more so to do with the emissions potentials, because obviously my background, so I calculate all the emissions that we could potentially release. So basically right now, the landfill is decrepit. The equipment, the pipelines, the valves, the stacks, everything on the landfill is about 40 years old. The last repairs that were done were maybe 10 years ago, and it's fallen apart really badly. And the reason I'm concerned about this, and the reason I think that New York City should be, obviously residents like yourself should be concerned about this, is because if we don't burn the gas regularly, then it's vented into the atmosphere, right? Yeah. And that is a huge amount of greenhouse gases.
Methane is the worst, right? I mean, methane is the worst.
One of the worst. One of the worst polluters next to NOx, which is a different thing, but N2S, which is laughing gas. Nitrous oxide is another really bad one. But methane is way more potent than CO2. And methane produced at a landfill also contains H2S, which is a isotope form of, basically once it touches water, it turns into sulfuric acid. That's also in the gas at the landfill because it's dirty gas, obviously. The problem is right now is that the person who's the head running the site for sanitation, he wants to shut it all down. He's been working here for 35 years and he's retiring soon. So he wants to shut down the site and hand it off to the Parks Department, which is the long-term goal, essentially. The problem is that the landfill is nowhere near ready to be decommissioned or turned into passive venting. We're still producing hundreds of millions of cubic feet of methane per year. I mean, you're talking about releasing like tons and tons of greenhouse gases over the course of the next few years because we're not flaring gas on a regular basis anymore, right? So we burn the gas on the landfill, these flares, in order to break it down into CO2, a lesser version of methane, because if we just let all the methane go into the air, that would be really bad for New York City with the urban heat island effect and obviously health issues with H2S in the air. So when we vent it, that's way worse than if we burn it. So the guy who runs the site doesn't even want to burn it anymore. He just wants to do passively venting this gas into the atmosphere. And that's not just going to be really bad for Staten Island residents, but that'll be really bad for the surrounding boroughs too in the metropolitan area. So you're talking like Red Bank, Bayonne, you're talking about obviously Lower Manhattan, you're talking about Governor's Island. All these places are going to really feel the heat effect, the urban heat island effect from these extra greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Now, in March, my company is going to be submitting a report to the EPA and the DEC about how much potential methane we're going to be emitting this year. And it's going to be skyrocketing because we haven't been burning the gas that much. We've just kind of been sitting on it.
Has anybody written about this yet?
No, and that's kind of why I'm calling, because no one in my site is I'm probably the most qualified person here to talk about this stuff, and most of the other people here are scared shitless to even consider doing this. But I'm a young fucking, climate scientist. I hate seeing this shit, and I want something to be done, at least public awareness about this type of stuff, because these are the real things that are going to affect, families and communities for 50 to 80 years. This methane's not going anywhere, and neither is this garbage on the landfill. It's sitting here.
All right. Well, I'll tell you
so
what.
If we're not doing something about it.
Yeah. All right. Listen.
Sorry, I didn't want to take up all your time.
No. I appreciate the call, and it's an important topic. Send me an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Tell me exactly, how much anonymity you want, and I have one or two people that maybe we can, get some more attention to this story.
Yeah.
Sure. What was the email again? MajorityReport@gmail.com.
MajorityReporters@gmail.com.
Reporters.
Yep.
Got it.
And just put fresh kill in the subject line.
Okay, I will.
I appreciate
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Just a year ago, there was a $34 million settlement reached for those claiming Staten Island landfills, including the fresh kill one, caused their cancer.
Ish. Call from a 309 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. Who's this?
Hi, this is Michael from San Antonio. How are you guys doing today?
Oh. Michael from San Antonio. You're doing a lot of San Antonio calls today. What's on your mind, Michael?
Yeah. Well, I actually, after the really terrifying call you just took, I was thinking I could tell you a fun little story that might be more heartwarming than anything.
Okay.
So this does involve you, so don't worry about it.
It does or does not?
It does. It does.
Oh.
No, it's good. Trust me. So I am about 36 years old right now. Okay. And when I was a younger man, about the age of 20, I met a woman who would become my wife later down the line. And so we've been married for 10 years now, and we've been together for 16. And I just wanted to say that one of the things that we bonded over when we first met was this little show no one else knew of called Home Movies.
Oh. Okay.
And one thing that she really kind of got entertained by was my singing a song in public before she really knew me of the song Septipus.
Septipus,
yes. Now, I don't know how many people who watch Majority Report understand what this is, but this was a young Sam Seder who was singing a song called Septipus about a 7-tentacled octopus with the character name of Fenton Muley.
That's correct.
And so when she heard me singing that, we struck up a conversation. That's really how we kind of started talking to get each other. So we were both big Adult Swim nerds, right? And so that's one of the things we bonded over, how much we love the show Home Movies. And so cut forward to about, say 11 years later, so 5 years ago. I was just kind of trolling around YouTube, and I heard this, just kind of listening to it in the background. And I just heard someone talking. And I was like, holy crap, that's Fenton Muley. What the hell is going on?
I must have been very excited. I must have been very excited when you heard that, because Fenton Muley, if I remember correctly, is slightly higher register than...
Yes. Well, I mean, he's an 8-year-old, right? So,
Right.
And so I rushed over to my computer, and I saw you for the first time, actually. And I was like, what is going on? And then, there's this, Fenton Muley's a political expert. And I was like, what the hell is happening in my life right now? I was baffled and fascinated all at the same time. And so I called my wife over. I'm like, listen to this. And she's like, why does that voice sound so familiar? I was like, it's Fenton. That's who it is. And so we had a good laugh over it. And anyway, so the movie of the story is that you were directly involved with my wife and my having a long-standing relationship. And without your contributions to the world of art, I don't know if that would have happened so much. So I do appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for that. That's actually, I don't know how much you understand how much your work actually means to people. I don't know if you hear it enough. But for me, it directly led to my wife and I being together for 16 years and us having a son.
Well,
so thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could help in greasing the wheels, as it were, between the two of you. You know that Coach McGurk does the opening of this show.
Oh, you mean that John H. Benjamin fella? What has he ever gone on to do?
H. John Benjamin, yeah, not much. I don't, as far as I know, he has never informed me that he has brought people together in the way that Fenton did. That's, that was a thing. I do remember at one point, Brendan and Lauren, who are the producers of that program, do you want the lead role? And I was like, no, I'll take the smaller role that will bring people together. That's what I want. And
Make a difference.
Yeah, I want to make a difference in people's lives. I don't want the accolades that the lead gets.
History will remember you more fondly.
Exactly. So, H. John Benjamin can have his, whatever it is, his vague glory. I will take the bringing of the people together, because that's more important.
Well, we do appreciate it. I do have one more thing here.
Sure.
I've been trying to call in for a while, so I wrote down notes about what I was going to say to you if I ever actually got on air. Right?
Okay.
And the first one I have here is, did you know that Emma was leaving TYT? Have you considered picking her up?
Wait, what do you mean?
So it's been
the joke is that it's been this long.
Been a long time. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. It's been a while.
Wait, were you leaving TYT?
I mean, I didn't leave TYT until I knew I was joining this
All right,
show.
fair enough.
Everybody.
Well, I didn't know that.
All right, what's the name of your wife or your kid?
My wife's name is Renee, and my son's name is Barrett.
I'm trying to do like a Barrett? Okay. Hey, Barber! That's a little like a Fenton variant. So you can use that for your phone, your ringtone. Hey, Bear!
Is that not just Hugo?
Well, no, Hugo's a little different. This is a little bit, right? I mean, Hugo's different.
Hugo's different, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. All right.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Happy marriage and kid to you. All right, bye-bye.
Well done.
There you go.
Happy marriage and kid.
Avalon Gracias. Just wanted to say, fuck you, Sam. You are responsible for sleepless nights watching you debate libertarians and the need to call you daddy. There you go. All right, thank you.
Maybe see a sleep specialist about that.
Have you read my email? This call is heartwarming after holy shit bib. Judy Giuliani, that's a deep Seder lore cut. Train boy, I'm thinking of selling my Subaru and then buying another Subaru, and that's my midlife crisis. Do you see? Yeah, Michael would have had a field day with that, without a doubt. And Foresto says the sacred number is 42. All right, do we have time for one more call? I think we do. We'll take one more call. This one is calling from, I believe, out of the country. It is a 44 country code. Who's this?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's my second call in. My first call in was about a couple of years back. I was talking about Bolsonaro and fascism in the Americas and the Great Valentine's Day get together with Trump. Anyway, actually, I wanted to have a serious call, talking about I don't think that the Democratic Party has a problem necessarily with woke and the moderates and the corporates. I think the Democratic Party has a real problem with being awake.
Okay. Now, wait a second. Before I ask you what that means, where are you calling from? What's your name?
Oh, my name's Anthony. I'm calling from England.
Anthony from England. And you think the Democrats have a problem with being awake?
Yes. Not necessarily being not necessarily like the internal divisions. It's more like being awake. If you take like the Operation Red Map the RNC underwent in 2010 and see the fact that the DNC has basically just slept the past 12 years,
yeah,
it's about time somebody actually pressed that alarm clock and said, "Hello, is anybody in here?"
Well, I would agree with you. Instead, what I call it is just total incompetence. I mean, it's just, I think they're incompetent. I mean, as you know, and some people would argue that it's an ideological problem. I think I have problems, obviously, with the ideology of a significant portion of the Democratic Party. But you would imagine even people I would disagree with ideologically want to win, and they're just incompetent.
Well, I mean, you can say that. I would say that they're grossly incompetent. I mean, to the point where it's actually negligence.
Yeah,
gross negligence at this stage. Because I mean, how can people like half of the remaining people in the Lincoln Project, Michael Steele, who gets regular appearances on MSNBC or CNN, he gets regular appearances on there, and all the media is like, yeah, these are nice people. I'm sorry, what? These people inadvertently brought about the Tea Party, then saw that the Tea Party evolved into the Trump Party, and now the Trump Party, I think, is going to go in another direction that's even more extreme. And they're thinking and how can those people who are supposed to be like far-right, incompetent, the MGT types and everything like that, how can they get away with it over the past 12 years? They've seen the monster they created. They're not happy with the monster they created. But it was like John Boehner.
I agree with you. I mean, one of the reasons why we never platformed any of those like never Trumpers was because like the problem's the Republican Party, and by promoting these never Trumpers, you are obscuring that problem, and I can understand. I can wrap my head around the idea of someone thinking like, we need to bring this country together, and the only way to solve this is if we maintain the processes, and I mean, I can understand that, but it's just, you've got to be so oblivious at this point to believe that, and that we need that what we need right now is a call for a need for two parties that are functioning. I mean, it's just absurd. It's bizarre.
Well, it's fairy tales.
It's fairy tales.
Well, and I saw a tweet the other week that was wondering why progressives, even though Stacey Abrams is moderate, that they don't seem to have a big problem with her. And there's a quote tweet that's like, well, she's a moderate, but she actually tries to beat the Republicans.
Yes.
And she has success with it. And she doesn't spend all of her time trying to undermine the left.
Yeah. Appreciate the call.
You want to wake up the Democrats. I mean, have Bernie Sanders be challenging in a primary.
Well, and I appreciate the call. And I think, Bernie has like starting to be a little bit more articulate with his criticism of the Democratic Party. I think we're going to start to see that. Because
well, I mean, if Manchin successfully kills Build Back Better,
right,
which seemed more likely than not right now, and it's Bernie, like, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, saw a lot of this Build Back Better bill that he helped craft. I mean, it was initially so much bigger by design because he wanted this to be his legacy.
Yep.
And Manchin is killing that.
Totally.
So, like, we're talking about the consequences for hundreds of millions of people, and that's the true tragedy. But there is in terms of Bernie's, as a personal fighter in power for everyday people, there is a tragedy in that too.
All right, let's take some IMs. Bradley, just take a look at what I just texted you or IM'd you. We'll take a couple IMs and then we'll get out of here. Let's see. There we go. Oh, we got a lot of... Joan in MA. Harry Potter spoiler. Dumbledore is gay.
Yep.
Mopping up. I hope there's more pressure put. I know Dumbledore died.
Oh, right, because Matt spoiled it for you.
Well, no, we
no,
passed
you got
it now.
you.
We
Oh,
passed it,
are you
yeah.
in book 7?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, yeah. I mean, the people are calling out a lot of the problematic stuff in Harry Potter recently. Like, did you notice that the one Asian character is named Cho Chang?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, there was a lot of like.
Are very anti-Semitic.
Nah, that doesn't bother me as
the
much.
one black character is named Kingsley Shacklebolt.
Right.
There's I mean, yeah.
Jon Stewart backpedaled though in kind of a lame fashion.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he's like they basically said I do not think J.K. Rowling's anti-Semite, and anti-Semitism is hard can sneak into any work of art. Basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly, and of course, there's a lot of older fantasy has those elements, and it doesn't prevent you from enjoying it, but it is just
also Mudbloods, a little bit eugenic, but anyway.
Yeah, but that's the point. I mean, they're against that.
Sure.
Whoa. All right.
It's still a race of magical beings, I guess. Well, sure.
What about the squibs who are born into magical blood but don't have the special properties? What are they?
That is funny.
Somebody wanted my Chris Noth story. I don't have time to do it right now. Oh, so you got to remind me later. Earlier. Let's see. Mopping up. I hope there's more pressure put on Biden about canceling federal student debt with the Higher Education Act, since it's basically the only thing he has left if he wants to win any midterms. I agree with you. Far be it for me from being in any way optimistic, but I think when these legislative things are dead, I think we'll see a little bit more unilateral action, I think, but maybe not. I don't know. Kirby424, hey guys, just sending in a fun environmental fact. In November, satellites detected significant undeclared methane gas releases. These kind of releases make natural gas as dirty as coal in terms of emissions. Natural gas is somehow dirtier than we first thought. Oh, that's great. That is fun. Super fun. Thank you. Come shower with Crowder. Adams has said everyone needs to participate in real-world commerce and go back to work. He doesn't care if he loses kids to diabetes, as long as their parents can continue to go to work. All right, 4 more. Is this me? The real problem with home ownership is since the 1970s, people have lived off credit, not income. As the cost of living rises, salaries do not keep up, so people borrow against the price of their homes to live. Like all capitalistic economies, this is untenable. Germaclean. Sam just oozes sexy Gen X. Fellow Gen Xers are digging it. Trust me. Thank you. Germaclean. Jeremaclean. Skippy. That was Mr. Big. Yeah, we'll get to that. Josh from Chicago. Any chance I can get on as a teacher to vent my frustrations right now and curse out Adams? I promise I won't rub it in Emma's face too much about the Bears win over the Giants. We'll get you tomorrow.
I don't care. They were tanking. I do not care.
Rob from Dedham. Not to down the mood. Any Bob Saget stories? I think I met Bob Saget once. The only thing I could tell you is literally everyone I knew said he was the sweetest guy. He was the dirtiest and the sweetest guy they knew.
Really?
Which was also really funny because
You think of him from Full House.
Full House and American, like his TV career couldn't have been more sort of like wholesome. ABC, shows was the wholesome channel, the Midwest type of channel, and he just for years I've just known that two things about him. People would say he was the one of the nicest guys in comedy, and also just filthy.
Well, that clip from what was the movie? The Chappelle movie was circulating. The Road in Your Apartment. I'm blanking on the name.
Half Baked.
Is
he in Half Baked?
He has like a 5. I'm hoping it's not the Chappelle Show and it is just Half Baked, but he has like a 5-second or 10-second cameo in Half Baked.
Oh no, I think that's on the Chappelle Show.
Oh, okay, never mind. But where he says he sucked for Coke or whatever. That's got to be. I think
that's Chappelle's show.
Oh damn.
And I remember watching The Aristocrats, which was like a whole bunch of comedians retelling like The Aristocrats.
That was Paul Provenza's movie, I think it was.
Yeah, and I remember, like the main reason I watched that because it's like you got to see what Bob's saying. It's the American Funniest Home Videos guy is doing in this.
Oh yeah.
The only time he was legitimately raunchy on TV was Entourage. He's on Entourage for a while, and he's just completely vulgar and sick.
I don't even remember that. I don't even remember him on Entourage. I've like blocked Entourage out of my mind.
All right, 3 more. Mark Monkey. I definitely appreciate interviews like this because one of the radicalizing moments for me is when you interviewed Andrew Highsmith about Flint years ago, learned about the history of the North End. You better believe they don't teach you that stuff in school, and people pretend like it's a coincidence or culture genetics that the North End of Flint is still the poorest area. I say that now we're in a continuance of a state of emergency for gun violence.
It was apparently half-baked. That was the Bob Saget quote.
Oh, all right. No hope and fear. Sam, have you seen the Channel 5 interview with the QAnon shaman? These people aren't going anywhere. He seems almost emboldened.
I clicked on that and it was like, oh, it's 42 minutes or something like that, and I couldn't do it. But, I mean, look at Andrew Callahan killing it. Yeah.
All right. We got to check that out. Pull that for tomorrow, that clip. And the final I am of the day... Freddie from Framingham's so bittersweet when Emma returns after vacations. I'm so happy to see her, but then my glee is replaced with a single teardrop rolling down my face.
I apologize.
As the football talk begins.
Yeah, I knew it. I'm so sorry.
All right, folks. Matt, Bradley, Emma, upon your return, great job today. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get